Here in session 61, we're going to continue on with multiplying by polynomials. The only difference here between this session and the previous one, session 60, was that in this session, instead of lining our polynomials up vertically like we did in 60 and then multiply, we're going to go ahead and multiply them as they're written horizontally. That's the only difference between the two lessons. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to be using our distributive property. Remember, when your distributive property says that when you're multiplying a phrase, a term, an expression that's composed of more than one term, you take each of the terms in that expression and then multiply it by each of the terms in the expression that you're then multiplying it by. So we're going to start here with our first term. We have two terms here in our first one, x and then a minus 1. So we're going to start with our x and we're going to multiply it by our first term in the second polynomial. What is x, or x to the first, times x to the second? Well, that's going to be x to the third. We're now going to take x times our second term. What is 1x times a minus 6x? Well, that's going to be a minus 6x squared. Now we're going to take our x and multiply it by our third term. X times 2 is just simply 2x. Now we're done with our first term. We're going to go to our second term now and multiply it by each of the terms in the second polynomial. So what is minus 1 times x squared? Well, that's going to be a minus x squared. What's minus 1 times a minus 6x? Well, that's going to be a positive 6x or a plus 6x. And then lastly, what is our minus 1 times a positive 2? That's going to be a negative 2. At this point now, our multiplication is finished. We now need to combine like terms together and we'll be done. How many terms have a degree of 3? Well, just this one, the x to the third. So we'll rewrite that. That's done. How many terms have a degree of 2, or x to the second? Well, 2 of them do. Minus 6x squared minus 1x squared. So that's going to be a minus 7x squared. It takes care of our degree of 2. Our third one, our x to the first, our third term, x to the first degree. We have a 2x and a plus 6x, which is going to be a plus 8x. That gets rid of those. And then our last one is simply a minus 2. So the answer to this question, x minus 1 times x minus 2 minus, x to the second minus 6x plus 2 is x to the third minus 7x squared plus 8x minus 2. We're going to take a look at this same problem here with our rectangle to illustrate it once again. Remember, it's going to be length times width, which is going to be one polynomial times another polynomial. This particular one has two components to it, so that's going to represent our x and our minus 1. And that's going to be multiplied by x squared minus a 6x and then a 2. So let's go ahead now and multiply each of the parts. We're going to take our x and multiply it by each of these three separately. X times x squared is x to the third. X times a minus 6x is a minus 6x squared. And then an x times a 2 is just simply 2x. Let's go to our last row. Minus 1 times x squared is minus x squared. Minus 1 times a minus 6x is a positive 6x. And then a minus 1 times a 2 is a minus 2. Now let's see what this corresponds to. I went ahead and crossed these out, so these may be a little bit difficult to see. But this x to the third here corresponds to this x to the third. This minus 6x squared here corresponds to this minus 6x squared. And this 2x here corresponds to this 2x. On the bottom here, this minus x squared corresponds to this minus x squared. Our 6x here corresponds to this 6x, and our minus 2 here corresponds to this one. And if we combine these together, we'll see that we get the same answer that we have over here. So multiplying polynomials going across, for some of you, may be just as simple as lining them up and down and multiplying them vertically. You just need to make sure that you take each term that exists in one polynomial and multiply it by each of the terms in the other polynomial, and then combine your like terms together, and that'll give you your final answer here for your multiplication of polynomials. Lastly, as review, polynomials can be multiplied by writing them together on the same row or horizontally, and you perform this multiplication by using the distributive property and multiplying each term in one polynomial by each term in the other one. That'll finish up session 61.